How are you finding your time at the summit so far?
It's incredibly impressive. It's one of the most professionally organized events that I've ever been a part of. We're here early on a Sunday morning, and the crowd is huge, and there were very good, very poignant questions asked and posed after my talk, so it's a tremendous experience. Thank you for inviting me.
And for those who were unable to attend the summit, could you give an outline of the key message that you wanted to convey through your talk?
Sure. So the key message I would argue is we're at a critical point for trade negotiations, trade policy negotiators for the next 10, 20, 50 years of the international trading system. The last 70 years have been governed by and successful, but largely because of multilateral efforts. First under the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, the GATT, and now the WTO, to lead to a sort of non-discriminatory and equitable world. That is dissipated. The efforts to push that agenda forward have dissipated over the last couple of years in favor of these mega-regional agreements. So the Transatlantic Trade Investment Partnership between the U.S. and EU, TTIP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership between the U.S., Japan, and a number of other Pacific Rim countries, the regional agreement in Asia that China is currently negotiating. And this is worrisome because this has the potential to undermine a lot of the benefits of multilateralism in trade that we have built up over the last 70 years. And a lot of the issues that the countries are negotiating over are incredibly important. They're moving beyond tariffs to regulations, labor standards, environmental standards, investment provisions, etc. These are critical issues, but they're not limited to bilateral or regional issues. These are issues that should be thought hard about in the multilateral context as well. And I get worried that by shifting focus from the multilateral to bilateral or regional frameworks, that we're going to come up with conflicting agreements, where there's going to be disagreements and uncertainty, and the erosion of a very good multilateral system and framework that we currently have in place today.
Okay, thank you. And in your talk, you mentioned preferential agreements. Do you believe that these agreements between countries are improving global economic cooperation or hindering it?
I think so far the evidence is mixed. There are certainly aspects, certain preferential agreements, probably the European Union is the best example of a positive one. But that's one that's gone well beyond trade integration into political integration and economic integration, monetary integration, and has developed the institutions necessary to be successful in those other areas as well, deepening their internal cooperation between a lot of like-minded countries. That's been beneficial. The forward and future push towards these preferential agreements, it's not clear to me whether we have the same sort of political will to build the kind of institutions that would be required to have the same sort of cooperation and deep integration on these regulatory issues as has been achieved thus far in Europe. I'm not sure the US and the EU could get there in the same way that the intra-European institutional framework has been, which we've seen in other contexts hasn't been perfect, right? But is still nevertheless the best example of progress to date that we've seen.
Okay. And having begun your career in academia, how would you say that the research you carry out impacts on policy making in the economic world?
I am hesitant to speak of my own impact because you don't know. I think what we try to do as economists is we try to provide frameworks for policymakers to help think through the trade-offs that they're making. Ultimately, they're going to make decisions based on the input that we provide them, on the economic costs and benefits of different alternatives that they're considering, but also the politics behind it. We can do our best to try to provide the efficiency rationales behind whether they should do X or Y, as well as the distributional impacts. This group is going to be better off, but this group is going to be harmed by that. But ultimately, we as economists and advisors are, one simple part of the equation. I think economists have been given a voice that may not have been there in earlier generations for policymakers to listen to. But I think even now, and some policymakers are doing better to make their decisions, their policy decisions based on evidence. But I don't want us to claim that we have too much insight or too much power in terms of influencing their ultimate decisions.
Great, thank you. And what has been the highlight of your career so far, would you say?
The highlight of my career is certainly the diversity. I've been able to experience everything that I've thus far wanted to experience. Teaching very good students, having wonderful academic colleagues, being able to work at the World Bank in a research environment that's supportive of evidence-based policymaking and trying to connect policymakers to research. But also, the experience that I had of working in the White House at the Council of Economic Advisors was valuable and was a tremendous learning experience for me, teaching me how it is that communicators process information, policymakers process information. So effectively how to communicate better with policymakers given the tremendous demands on their time. If you want to be able to make a point to them that you think is important, you've got to do it concisely, clearly, and then get out of the way.
Okay, thank you. And finally, could we get a testimonial from you for the Economic Summit?
Well, as I mentioned, this is perhaps the most professionally organized event that I've ever had the privilege of being a part of. And that includes a number of events that I've organized myself that are not nearly this level of complexity in terms of carrying off. But then whether we're talking about events that academics run or that international organizations run, the organizational skills of your team, the environment that's been created, and the buzz of the students and others that are here in the audience, the questions that I got were outstandingly insightful and perceptive. We could do this for weeks. You guys have papers and exams to study for, but it's been tremendous.
Thank you very much. Chad Bown, thank you for speaking to us today.